Plenty has been discussed about the New York Knicks and their upcoming season, both on this channel and in the general media. From their young talented players such as Kevin Knox, Mitchell Robinson and Frank Ntilikina, to when Kristaps Porzingis is set to return from his ACL injury. But one player on their roster who is set to play the biggest role on the entire team is hardly being spoken about. That player is Tim Hardaway Junior. He's about to enter his 6th season in the NBA and will be one of the most important for the definition of the rest of his career. Hardaway was signed by the Knicks last offseason for 4 years and $71 million, and they expected him to help create and score alongside Porzingis. But after the injury, Hardaway was all of a sudden the most talented offensive scorer on the team and became the first option. This saw him score the ball at a decent level, but also shoot low percentages, turn the ball over, and fail to set up for his teammates at a high level. This season, the Knicks will have more talent on the court and will need Hardaway to do slightly less of the creation. They'll want to see him score the ball still, but ideally on less shots, while shooting a higher percentage and ensuring important future players such as Knox and Ntilikina touch the ball. But can Hardaway manage this? This video will examine that question in detail and dive into just what kind of a player he really is and what role he can play going forward. But before we dive into that, let's take a look at the history of Hardaway and his story in the NBA thus far. Hardaway is the son of one of the most entertaining point guards to ever play the game in Tim Hardaway Sr. From the moment he was born, there were likely expectations to live up to. Big basketball shoes to fill. Hardaway Junior would begin his serious basketball career at Michigan, where he would play 3 years of collegiate basketball. In what was almost foreshadowing, Hardaway would have inconsistent shooting years at Michigan, shooting 37%, then 28%, and then 37% in 3 different seasons. But he would be a consistent scorer for a strong team, and was regarded by most draft analysts as a solid second-round pick in the draft. This all changed when Hardaway was invited to the NBA Combine and impressed with his incredible athleticism and size. Hardaway had always been viewed in a similar light to his father, a little undersized and not incredibly athletic aside from his quickness. But the Combine showed that he was in fact a great jumper, had good length and size, and like his dad, was still very quick. It was for these reasons that he launched into the first round of the draft when the Knicks took him with the 24th pick. He immediately impressed alongside Carmelo Anthony as he averaged over 10 points a game and shot decent percentages from deep in his rookie season. Knicks fans had huge hopes that he would develop into a strong player who could shoot the lights out and score the ball. But he would regress in his second season as he shot worse percentages and turned the ball over twice as much as he had in his rookie year. Hardaway was trying to do much for the first, but not the only time in his NBA career. After this season, the Knicks would trade him to Atlanta for the 19th pick in the draft. Obviously, Hardaway still had value as he was young, athletic, could shoot, and played one of the shallowest positions in the league, but the Knicks wanted to move on, and securing another talent long term was too good a deal for them to pass up. And the move would eventually benefit Hardaway more than the Knicks. He found themselves on the Atlanta Hawks, a team that had been one of the strongest in the Eastern Conference under Coach Bud. Under Bud, he was put under a tighter leash and wasn't allowed as much freedom initially. He was expected to come off the bench, shoot threes, play defense, and attack opposing defenses when they had closed out on him too quickly. Tim would initially struggle with the strict system as he was used to playing more of a free-flowing style of basketball. But over the course of his 2-year stint at the Hawks, he would grow tremendously as a player. He would play more within the offense and flow of the game, and while he still had games where he would put up shots and take over, they were less than in New York and were only when he was scorching hot from deep. In his last season in Atlanta, Hardaway had one of the best on and off differentials in the entire NBA. When he was on the court, Atlanta were 10.2 points better per 100 possessions, which is simply incredible, and would create a small buzz around his upcoming free agency. He was obviously good, and the Hawks would have loved to keep him for around $12 million a year, but for each million above this, the question became more apparent. Just how good could he become, and would he ever be a positive defender? The Knicks would eventually make a bold offer of 4 years and $71 million, working out to be around $17.75 million a season. The Hawks eventually decided not to match, and Hardaway would make his return to Madison Square Garden. This move was an example of what disjointed management in the NBA can lead you to. The Knicks could have simply kept Hardaway for the full 4 years and then let the market decide his value for them. I highly doubt any team would have offered such a big contract, and they could have matched and had him for a far lower price. Instead, they had to slightly overpay for Hardaway, which has turned out to be fine and won't cost the Knicks long term, but is an example of how this move could potentially cost teams in the future. The Knicks will still have the salary cap to sign a max free agent or even potentially 2 next season, and that flexibility will get even better when Hardaway comes off the books. And Hardaway was incredibly entertaining to watch for the Knicks last season. His play is dictated by pulling up from 3 with irrational confidence, daring drives, and incredible finishes at the rim. At times, he can be incredibly frustrating to watch, with turnovers and missed shot after missed shot, making Knicks fans pull their hair out. But if someone took highlights of his best 5 games last season and showed someone who didn't know who Tim Hardaway Junior was, they would probably say he's one of the best players in the entire NBA. And the Knicks will be hoping that more of these games come this season and the season after that. With Porzingis out, Hardaway will be free to control the offense for the most part. I think the Knicks will start something like Frank Ntilikina, Hardaway, Kevin Knox, Lance Thomas, and Enes Kanter to start the season. They could replace Thomas with Lee or Ntilikina with Burke, but the changes are relatively minor. Hardaway is clearly the best offensive guard and perimeter creator on that lineup, and will be tasked with doing a lot of these duties. He will get a huge amount of shots, and the entire Knicks offense will likely revolve around him and Kanter to begin the season. And this season, I think Hardaway could really take advantage of this opportunity. At training camp last year, Hardaway and the Knicks were preparing for a season focused around Porzingis. He was their new star, and the offense had to revolve around him. Hardaway would have been getting ready and focusing on his shooting and off-ball movement more than creating in one-on-one situations. And when KP went down, the whole team had to adjust to a new style of play. But this season, the team will be ready, and I imagine Hardaway will be asked to come off a large amount of screens as well as run a lot of pick and roll himself to generate offense. But the majority of Hardaway's offense should come primarily off the ball. Last season, 80% of his 3-point shots were assisted, and 61% total of his shots were assisted also. This indicates that Hardaway can get to the rim by himself, but struggles to create his own 3-point shot. And that is completely normal at an NBA level. There are very few players in the entire league that can create their own 3-point shot at high volumes and be successful. Timmy will want to look to get his 3-point shots coming off of screens and in transition almost exclusively. He should also try to look to get to the corners more often. Last season, Hardaway only shot 13% of his attempts from the corners, even though he shot 38% on these shots, compared to 31% from all other threes. I think this was a result of his environment, as the Knicks lacked anyone else who could truly create from the top of the key for most of the season. As a result, Hardaway had to occupy this space in order to drive and collapse defenses to get the Knicks offense to run. But this year, with a more aggressive Ntilikina, Trey Burke, and Kevin Knox on the roster, there should be more players who are able to create offense from the top of the key. This will allow Hardaway to spend more time trying to get into the corners using down screens. Hardaway would frequently come around a screen and make his way towards the wing, and he would do this almost every time he used one of these screens. If he fakes this motion and then moves to the corner, it should create open looks for him occasionally. Kyle Korver is one of the masters of this move, as is Steph Curry. They run it over and over again in games, and their defenders will sometimes cheat the screen and go over it to try and get out to the wing to defend them. When this happens, they slip to the corner and have all the time in the world to shoot their shot. Hardaway will have to do more of this to generate more corner threes, which is by far his most efficient form of offense. If he can do this and limit the number of pull-up threes, he should improve his efficiency in this area immensely. There is one other major area I would like to see Hardaway work on this summer and in the upcoming season. That being his pick and roll game. Hardaway has run a fair few pick and rolls in his career, but he hasn't fully grasped on how to run it to better his team and not just himself. When he comes off screens, he tends to look his own shot more than his teammates. He frequently pulls up for a mid-range jump shot or dives into the heart of the defense for some kind of difficult layup. I will say I don't mind Hardaway pulling up for some of these mid-range jumpers, as he has a beautiful stroke and rises up very high with his strong jumping ability. The option to hit this shot keeps defenses on their toes, as they simply can't sag off him and give him space. But what will open up the most space is if Hardaway works on his ability to hit the roll man in good positions. He has struggled with this, and it allows teams to effectively double Hardaway on pick and rolls, as he is no real threat to thread the needle to Kanter or Robinson. However, he makes these passes more frequently than he does the kickouts to the 3-point shooter. NBA defenses have advanced to the point where almost all of them rotate onto the pick and roll in some way. The key to beating this is recognizing this motion early and passing it out of the play and over the top of the defense to the open man on the 3-point line. This trend is part of the reason that tall point guards and power forwards find themselves back in vogue. Passing over defenses to the 3-point line is easier for tall players who have the height and ultra-athletic guys that can leap over defenses. Ben Simmons and LeBron are the best examples of this ability, but watch Russell Westbrook play and you'll see how he uses his explosive athleticism to create passing lanes as much as he does to create looks at the rim. Hardaway has the size at 6'6" and the leaping ability to make some of these passes if necessary, but he has to be exceptionally careful in doing so, as leaping commits you to passing or shooting, and if a player times it incorrectly, it will lead to a turnover. And this is the story of Hardaway in essence. He's a player with all of the talent who just needs to play within himself slightly more and make smarter decisions on the court. Knicks fans will be hoping that he plays like this season, because if he doesn't, he quickly becomes an overpaid player that is limiting the development of the youth. If Hardaway does take too many shots when on the court, I can see his minutes being cut if he isn't being efficient. Fizdale has indicated he won't play people for the sole reason that they are veterans, and the inside of the Knicks organisation would know that without Porzingis this season, it is a season for development, and any winning is purely upside. But I think enough of the signs are there, and Hardaway might be able to put it all together this season and play the role that everyone knows he can. If he does put it all together, then he'll be the perfect piece for the 2019-2020 NBA season. The Knicks will be looking to sign a max free agent this offseason and then extend Porzingis after that. They'll also have a high draft pick and could add a lot of talent to the team this offseason, as well as any improvements from Ntilikina and Knox. This could see Hardaway becoming a 4th or 5th option and eventually off the bench. But if he can shoot threes efficiently, get to the corners and create secondary offense and set up his teammates, that is an incredibly valuable piece. Even though he'll be asked to do so much more than that this season, it is essentially an audition for his future, and it will decide whether or not he is a piece for the Knicks team of the future. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications. And let me know what you think of Hardaway in the comment section below.